I've been a landlord for a number of years now, so if you're looking for a little bit of advice, stay tuned. Hey, what's up? I'm Mark Terribellini, and I'm all about achieving financial independence through real estate investing and online business. So if you're interested in achieving financial freedom for yourself, be sure to like and subscribe and you'll not miss a thing. So I bought my first rental property in the summer of 2018, and boy was I nervous at that point. I had zero experience at all whatsoever at that point. I didn't have any friends that did it. It was very nerve-wracking, and I ran the numbers enough, I ran the numbers a million times to realize I was going to make maybe like $100 a month after all expenses were paid. But I wasn't certain on that. I was just kind of guessing that's what I could make. And I purchased the property, and there was actually tenants in place already when I bought the property, so they stayed there, and that's what it turned out to be. I was making about, I think, just under $150 a month, so it was a little bit better than I was expecting. So it turned out to be pretty well. Didn't have a lot of expenses at first. The property was built in 1996, so no major updates or anything like that. So pretty smooth sailing, really. And I've been doing it for a few years now, and I've gone through a number of tenants, and I got a little bit of advice for you for this. So I'll kind of go through my list here. I've got about 8 different things. So number 1, treat it like a business. Don't treat it like a hobby. You need to have a certain sequence steps that you do, like kind of a protocol for anything that may come up. So you're going to want to keep property maintenance in mind. You want to keep things maintained, and whether that's the exterior paint, if anything breaks, you need to repair it. You got to keep your contracts in order, taxes, insurance, like all the boring, I guess what you say, just like business things. Like treat it like a business. Like you have income, you have expenses, keep track of everything, and just really stay on top of it. Don't treat it like a hobby because it doesn't work out very well. So that's my first tip. Second tip would be to determine your tenant criteria. And this is important because you don't want to just, put up an ad and accept the first person who reaches out, because, that could end up being okay, but generally speaking, that's not a good idea. You need to have certain criteria and look for that when you're screening tenants. So for things you want to keep in mind, you want a decent credit score. Now, these are things that you can determine for yourself. So if they have a higher credit score, that's going to be kind of a safer bet, but it kind of depends on the area that the house is in. If people have a lower credit score in that area, it's going to be tough to find a really high credit score. So you kind of have to gauge, what's good for the area. You're going to have income requirements. Generally speaking, it's like 2.5 times the monthly rent, 2.5, 3 times the monthly rent, something like that. And that's household income. So if there's 2 people making an income, you kind of combine that together. Income requirements. You have to decide if you will allow pets or not. You can also have pet fees, so you can add that to the rent as well. A criminal record. So you have to basically do a background check to see if they have any kind of criminal record. Now, depending on the laws in your area, you have to be careful about criminal record, because if it's something kind of small, like a small little crime, you can't really discriminate too much. But if it's some of the big ones like murder, assault, things like that, those you can not accept their application at that point. Rental history is another big one. If you see that they have not paid their rent in the past, that's a big red flag. So, but there's something you want to look into, and that is the Fair Housing Act. And you don't have to worry about it too much as a small landlord. If you have less than 3 properties, I believe, you don't have to worry about this as much. But basically, the Fair Housing Act helps stop discrimination. So you cannot block someone from renting your place based on race, religion, sex, all those kinds of things. You can't do that. So do keep that in mind, because if you can get in trouble. So keep that in mind. Next one would be again, along with tenants, make sure to always require a tenant application, credit check, and background history. And make no exceptions for this unless you personally know the people that are going to be moving in. Don't make exceptions because it's just for your own safety. Because this is a somewhat of a risky business, and you're trying to mitigate as much risk as you can. So by doing all these checks and balances, you're basically insulating yourself from that risk. So you want to do things like on their application, call their previous landlord, see if they paid all their rent on time, if there's any issues, if there's any litigation issues or anything. Call their references. Really check and see if they're a good fit for your rental. And so number 4 would be to test the rental market when you're trying to figure out what to charge. You can look online, you can look on things like Apartmentscom and kind of get a general idea as far as what you can charge, but you can start with your price maybe a little bit higher because you never know, people might take it off the market like that. Because if it's a hot market, people are gonna, take what they can get. So you can actually start with a little bit higher, and if no one bites, you can always lower the price a little bit later. So you don't be afraid to start a little bit high and then bring it down as necessary. Let's see. So number 5, ask that your renters or require that your renters purchase their own renter's insurance. This kind of protects you from, like, let's say there's, you have a broken pipe in the house or something, and some of their stuff gets damaged. They have renter's insurance that can cover their own property, so doesn't come back on you as the landlord. So require that, and it protects you and it protects them in case there's a theft or anything like that. So that's always a really good thing. Number 6 is a no-brainer. Have a solid rental agreement. And what I suggest you do here is use a version that's modeled closely to your state's real estate commission. So for Texas, it's Texas Real Estate Commission. So it's TREC is what it's called, but they have their own leases. And basically what you can do is go in, find their lease, and do something. They don't want you to copy it exactly because it's their own specific copy. But model it closely, and they've thought of pretty much everything in those leases. So if you model it closely after that, you're going to be pretty well protected. So have a solid lease agreement. Number 7, I would say keep everything you can online. Keep anything that let's say you do a rental agreement and they sign it, scan it, upload it, so the contract's online on their portal. Have their rent payments online, so they pay online, so that way it makes it so much easier. You don't want to have rent checks that go through the mail or anything like that. You just want to make it so it connects directly to their bank account and it transfers money from their bank to your bank, and it's super easy. So that's the best way to go. When you do any communication with your tenants, be sure to make sure it's through email, or text is another one. On the phone is not great because there's no record of it. So when you have a paper trail, you can show, if there's any issues, you can show that you took care of it. If they say otherwise, you have proof. So that is important. It's also good for tracking, your expenses or anything like that, and your income basically as well. So that's good for taxes and everything. And a good way to handle this is Apartmentscom. You can set up everything in there, and that's what I use personally because it makes it so easy. Like I said, you can upload your leases, any paperwork you want, you can upload it to your portal, and then the tenants can see it and download it if they want, or print it, whatever they want to do. They can pay their rent on there, they can pay their security deposit, you can give the security deposit back, you can do all kinds of great stuff, and it's all free. It's all free unless you want to do more of the advanced features. So, for example, if you are doing tenant screening, they have options where you can require them to do a background check and credit check, and they actually pay for it. It's like, it's probably going to change, but it's like $50 or so. And they pay for it, you receive the results, and that way you don't have to take their social security number or any of that sensitive information. You can completely be hands off with that and just use Apartments.com to handle everything. It makes it super easy. Yeah, it's great. I highly recommend it. And finally, number 8 here is to try and invest in landlord-friendly states. And what I mean by that is certain states kind of lean more towards the landlord side versus the renter. So if, for instance, in Texas, if the tenant stops paying rent, you can kick them out of your place sooner, a lot sooner. But if you're in a place like California and the tenant stops paying rent, you can't kick them out for months, 6 months, a year, and you're stuck paying the mortgage that entire time. And it is a major risk. So if you're going to be buying a number of properties and you want to kind of insulate yourself or kind of mitigate that risk a little bit, I would suggest investing in landlord-friendly states. And if you want to know which states those are, all you have to do is go into Google and type in a little search, landlord-friendly states, and you get a whole list of good places to invest. So if you like this information, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.